You're listening to the Oncology Nursing Podcast, where ONS Voices Talk Cancer, a resource from the Oncology Nursing Society. Through conversations with subject matter experts, we examine the important issues in oncology nursing, from new treatments to patient-centered research to advancements in clinical practice. Join us as we hear from nurses in all facets of oncology care, from bench to bedside and everywhere in between. Welcome to the Oncology Nursing Podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Oncology Nursing Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Jardine, Oncology Clinical Specialist at ONS. And today we are joined by ONS President Janine Brant, ONS Board of Directors Secretary Teresa Knoop, and ONS Board of Directors Treasurer Valerie Berger. They will be having a conversation reflecting on their experiences with ONS and oncology nursing and what the work of the board officers entails, among other things. You can also earn free NCPD contact hours by completing the evaluation we've linked in the episode notes. Janine, you have served on the board for 2 years and transitioned to ONS President at the end of April for your final year on the board. Why don't you begin the conversation by telling us a bit about your background in oncology nursing, and then Teresa and Val can follow.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. And it's a pleasure to be here. So I was hired as a new graduate into oncology nursing, and it was really a perfect fit for me. I enjoyed the challenge of learning about innovative therapies, but I also was able to build relationships with both patients and their families. I did have to go to the ICU for a stint, thinking I had always wanted to be a critical care nurse, but I quickly discovered that I was called to be an oncology nurse. So I spent about a year there and came back to oncology for the rest of my career. I ended up pursuing a master's degree and was an oncology clinical nurse specialist for 18 years. And then I finished a PhD in cancer nursing, and I currently practice as a nurse scientist. Teresa, how about you?
Hi, thanks, Janine and Stephanie. Well, I worked the first 6 years of my career as an RN on a variety of med-surg units, on a pediatric unit, and in a small emergency room. But in 1984, I began my career in oncology nursing, and that quickly became my passion. I stayed in oncology for the rest of my career, obtaining my master's degree as a clinical nurse specialist with a focus in adult oncology. And I spent the last 24 years of my journey working in cancer clinical trials. I retired from the Vanderbilt Ingram Cancer Center in Nashville in 2021. This month, May 2022, marks my 44th year as a nurse.
Great. Thanks, Teresa. That's amazing. How about you, Val?
Hello, everybody. So great to be here. I was looking for a job in pediatrics. When I got out of nursing school, I wanted to be a peds nurse. And I did that for the first couple of years of my career. And I moved back to New York, and I walked into a hospital on 68th Street and York Avenue in New York looking for kids. I wound up getting a job in pediatric oncology at Memorial Sloan Kettering. And that was the beginning of my oncology career, and I haven't looked back. That was 32 years ago. Since then, I've worked in peds, I've worked in adults, I've worked in academia, I've worked in hospice, bone marrow transplant. I've worked in community hospitals. I've worked in quaternary hospitals, teaching facilities, sometimes all at the same time. The beauty of oncology nursing is that there are so many options. And in each one, you really get to know your patients in a very special way. I'm grateful for having landed where I did.
Thanks, Val. That's so true for all of us. So we're going to start talking now about some of our leadership roles and what was helpful in our journey toward leadership. I know for me, I've been an informal leader for most of my career. My goal in life, in fact, was to never be a manager early on because I loved clinical care so much. But as a clinical nurse specialist, I was able to make changes in the delivery of cancer care by really staying current in state-of-the-art cancer care. I chaired committees, I led task forces, and I really used my voice to influence healthcare systems. I developed my own role in the systems in which I worked, and I was able to have an informal influence on the oncology nurses around me. I also served as the Big Sky ONS chapter president, and it was the charter Big Sky chapter, so I was the first. And then I served on statewide boards of directors, including the American Cancer Society and the Montana Breast and Cervical Health Program. So I think what helped me most was that I truly jumped into any opportunity that I could find, and I really learned along the way. How about you, Teresa?
It's funny that you mentioned that about management because that was never my goal either. When I started out, I did end up in management and tried to find a way, as you did, to make sure that those management skills affected daily patient care. And that would be what brought my fulfillment as a manager. But I was really blessed during my career to have nurses as role models and mentors. My very first director of nursing was Alice Higgins in a small community hospital in Mayfield, Kentucky. And she really taught me how to be a nurse leader, even though I could not even imagine it at the time. She saw something in me I did not see in myself. She was quite influential in my early part of my career. Debbie Wojcik is another mentor for me throughout my career who has encouraged me to grow professionally. Barb Goebel, Connie Hinkie Yarbrough are some of the names of people who encouraged me to start to publish. I didn't think that that was an avenue for me. These people believed in me. They encouraged me to grow professionally. I was offered leadership roles early on in my career, and I began to just take every opportunity to stretch and to grow. And I think for me, many of those opportunities took me out of my comfort zone. That's what I would encourage all of you to do. Dare to get out of your comfort zone to grow as a leader and listen to those voices who tell you you can. And for those of us who are getting to this stage of our career, retirement, be that voice for other nurses. I think that's one of the things ONS offers us, the opportunity to be a voice to our younger nurses.
Al, how about you?
That's some cast of characters, Teresa. No wonder you're so fabulous and well-rounded. I agree with both Teresa and Janine. Taking every chance in front of you is the key to growth, right? Being inquisitive or nosy, as my brother used to say. That nosiness, that inquisitiveness has led me to many opportunities. You need to step up. I had the opportunity to be the chair of the Long Island board of the American Cancer Society. I'm on a board with a beauty salon in our area that provides free care for patients with cancer. I early in my life stepped up when the kids were in a cooperative nursery school. So leadership comes in lots of different ways. I think for me, you need to believe in yourself and take that chance. You may not have a mentor in the beginning, but you have that flame inside you that says, I can do that. I want to try that. So find anyone who supports you, but take the chance on yourself. And I think you'll be surprised. You know, what's the worst that can happen is you miss your mark. So you try again. You dust yourself off, you move on if that's not the right place for you to be. There are great lessons everywhere. And in that, you learn. You learn about your own capabilities with every experience. And unless you challenge yourself, you're never going to know how great you are.
Thanks to both of you. So I heard you both talk about mentors, and I heard some ONS names in there as well. I think ONS has really greatly impacted all of our careers. And some of those mentors that we discovered within ONS have been the most, I think, inspirational for us. I was fortunate to find mentors early on within ONS, and I found them by going to Congress. I served on committees, and I even reached out to nursing leaders over email. I used to be a little starstruck at first, thinking, are they going to answer me? Will they give me the time of day? I can tell you 100% of the time they got back to me and offered mentorship, offered guidance. I've had various mentors through the years. So depending on what role I was serving, I would seek mentors in that area. For example, I had writing mentors early on. I had mentors when I was a clinical nurse specialist. And then as a nurse scientist, I've had different mentors. And I've also had leadership mentors. So I continue to seek mentors and really value their insight with the many things that I do, because I'm always trying to grow and learn from the leaders who went before me. And I also hope that I can be that leader who always lends a helping hand to other nurses and mentors them when they call out. Teresa, how about you?
Well, my involvement in ONS began with me attending a local ONS chapter meeting at the invitation of an oncology nursing colleague named Becca Engel. Becca just made that simple invitation, which in many ways changed the trajectory of my career, because that involvement at ONS at the local level by serving on committees, serving in a variety of offices, eventually including president of the local chapter. I then took advantage of any volunteering opportunities at the national level. ONS and the networking with mentors and colleagues have just offered me through the years a multitude of opportunities to publish, to speak, and to overall feel like I'm contributing to improving oncology care. That's what ONS has given me. So again, I encourage all of us to look around at nurses who may be new to oncology, invite them to that local chapter meeting, invite them to get involved. Sometimes people don't get involved because they didn't get an invitation. So I think back, maybe I wouldn't have gotten an invitation to a local chapter meeting. And how would that have really changed what I did with my career? So something as simple as just an invitation to a meeting can really impact a person's career.
I think you're so right, Teresa. And that strengthens us too as an organization. The more you bring people in. When I started my career, I was in peds oncology, and it was 32 years ago. AFON wasn't around. So I joined ONS because that was the organization that was available to me. I learned so much. Remember, I'm the nosy one, right? So I poked around on the website. I looked at opportunities. I looked at the journals. I joined our local chapter, and I don't remember if I was invited or if I just joined because I knew that that was, where the strength of our group was. And I met a broad bunch of oncology nurses, and that led me to building this whole network. And, I became secretary to our local group and learned a little bit about what was done sort of nationally and got closer and closer to ONS. And that was the introduction that I needed, having that connection to the larger organization. So I began to put myself out for smaller projects. And I felt fortified because I had the strength and the knowledge of ONS behind me. I didn't feel like I was trying to do it by myself, but I was really a part of that larger group and that group of professionals that knew so very much.
I love hearing how much ONS was a foundation to all of us. And I think that's true for many of our members. So here we are now on the board of directors for the Oncology Nursing Society. And we're going to switch gears a little and talk about our board experiences and even some of the diverse backgrounds that we have coming to the board. So the board of directors at the Oncology Nursing Society is comprised of 9 individuals. We differ from one another in a lot of ways: race, ethnicity, gender, age, ability, background, experience, and education. And we look at this diversity in a very positive way. It helps us to have diverse conversations. We make decisions at the board level to ensure that we're really thinking out of the box. We want to be inclusive of our members. We think about chapters, we think about members, we think about all of you. And we really try to consider our DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion in all decisions that we make. With that, we had an exercise once and talked about our diverse backgrounds, though, and I think they really do shape who we are and speak to diversity on a more global level than sometimes we think of when we look at a picture on a page. So for me, I was born and raised in Montana, and so I really do bring that rural perspective. I live basically in the middle of nowhere. We're the 4th largest state, and yet we only have about 1 million people. We hit 1 million people in the 2010 census. So my parents were uneducated. They came by stagecoach from the East. My dad had a 5th grade education. My mother had an 8th grade education. I have 2 siblings, but I was the only one to complete college. So I feel really privileged to have gone on and even completed a PhD in nursing. But I often function from that lens of critical thinking with my PhD. But my rural and meager background has allowed me to just have a deep appreciation for education and opportunities as I had to really actively seek these out. They weren't available to me in my community. In fact, we had no master's program in Montana. And so I ended up going to California at UC San Francisco for my master's degree. And I took advantage of every opportunity. I was like a kid in the candy store because I did not have those things right in front of me. So I do have a deep appreciation for learning and kind of bring that rural perspective. Teresa, tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, well, I too was born and raised in a rural area. I was born and raised in a rural farming community in West Kentucky, and my family still lives in this area. In fact, I took my husband, who was my boyfriend 46 years ago, to visit the area, and he said, "I believe there are more cows than people in this area." And I said, "Yes, I believe you are correct." So my first experience in nursing was in very small community hospitals. I worked med surg in most of those areas, and we took care of a lot of cancer patients, but it was not in an area where there were any dedicated oncology units at that time. We then moved to Nashville, and I got experience in more urban settings. In fact, for the last 24 years of my career, I was involved in cancer clinical trials at an academic NCI designated comprehensive cancer center, Vanderbilt Ingram Cancer Center in Nashville, Tennessee. Diversity, equity, and inclusion were very important aspects of the care we gave in the clinical trials arena. And I think my early background in rural nursing really helped me with the perspective of the need to make trial opportunities available in all settings, particularly in those underserved settings. And I was keenly aware of so many barriers for patients in a variety of settings that are outside the urban areas. I try to bring the same perspective to the decisions we make on the board of directors. And I hope that that experience through the years with the need to maintain DEI through our offering of clinical trials is a perspective that's helpful on the board.
Thanks, Teresa. And Val, you come from a very different background. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
I sure do, yeah. So Janine and Teresa come from very clinical backgrounds. Mine is more administrative, but I don't think that's what Janine was talking about. I have been throughout my career in diverse roles. I've been a staff nurse, an educator, a manager, a director, now an assistant vice president of a service line working regionally. But I am a city girl. So I was born and raised in New York City. I was in the subway and buses to get around by the time I was 10. I went to high school in Harlem. The city was my playground. You know, the amazing thing about New York City with a population of over 7 million compared to Janine's 1 million is crazy. The idea that we have 7 million people in 2,000 square miles as opposed to 1 million people in that vast amount of land, our fourth biggest state, is just crazy to me. I was steeped in diversity growing up. I didn't know anything differently. I grew up in what is now one of the most ethnically diverse neighborhoods in New York City with, more than hundreds of languages spoke in a small radius. My grade school had the beauty of multiple cultures and traditions spread out among all my friends. I lived in a townhouse in Queens where there was an Irish bagpiping hall 2 doors down from our house, a Korean church on the corner, and a Spanish market on the avenue. And that was all just within 100 yards of my home. So it set me up to enjoy varied foods, travel, conversation about all different cultural backgrounds. But what I saw, what I think translates for me most about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is that when I was younger, we had a big problem with homelessness in New York City. So seeing people who were homeless, significant substance abuse or mental health problems, led me to think about things a little bit differently. I volunteered early. I took jobs that put me out into those communities and always had that desire to want to help those people. I think that helps me think broadly now in nursing and know that intrinsically everyone is different. Even if we all pull our pants on the same way, we all need something a little bit differently. We view the world differently. We smell the world differently. We listen to music differently. And that makes it really kind of interesting.
And this really illustrates how very different we are as 9 members of the ONS Board of Directors. So when we think about what prepared us for the board, were there mentors along the way? What made us run for the board? I think for me, that 35 years of diverse experiences really prepared me for board service. I talked earlier about being the Big Sky ONS chapter president, but early on, like I noted, I said yes to a lot of things. I was on the ONS Clinical Practice Committee. I was part of the CJON editorial board, and I led the pain special interest group. And we eventually published some pain guidelines just a couple of years ago. But there's a lot of different things that prepared me along the way. And during those early years, I just want to mention a couple of my mentors. Dawn Camsorrell was my writing mentor, and she was chairing the ONS Clinical Practice Committee at the time. I remember getting the first writing assignment for her. We used to write all of the chemo guidelines. We'd write the access guidelines, and that's how work was accomplished. So she encouraged me to write. She gave me assignments. She gave me deadlines, but she also taught me to be really disciplined with the writing schedule. She said, if you don't write every week, your brain's going to lose its focus in being able to write. So we had a day carved out a week to write. And I've continued. Now it's kind of interspersed with my week just because I'm so disciplined at writing. But Dawn was such an early mentor. And then I moved to my master's degree at UC San Francisco. And Mary Lynn Dodd, who is now on our foundation board, was really instrumental in leading me down the path of oncology nursing along with Pat Larson, my advisor. And then there was a woman I met at the coffee machine. Her name was Chris Myskowski. Within 5 minutes, I knew that she was a leader that I wanted to follow. She inspired me, and she ended up being on my dissertation committee. And as many of you know, she's one of the best funded researchers in oncology nursing around the world. And she's an incredible leader. Then I moved on to my PhD program where I met Susie Beck and Kathy Mooney. And Kathy, of course, was a past president of ONS. And then Regina Fink has been a mentor to me for her experience as an embedded nurse scientist. She was at the University of Colorado and practiced that embedded nurse scientist role. And so I sought out her wisdom and her advice. We had the privilege of traveling to the Middle East together to do work with ONS. She's also a pain and palliative care expert. So these leaders along the way, I think really prepared me for board service. So while I did a lot with ONS and it did prepare me to be a leader along the way, being on the board is very different. It's the leading of the initiatives and then serving on other boards of directors that really helped me to be a board, quote unquote, member. Because being on the board isn't writing guidelines, it's not doing things, but it's that strategy, fiscal accountability, and oversight. So leading different initiatives, but being willing to step forward and then having leadership mentors along the way were all very instrumental in how I got here. How about you, Teresa?
Well, as I said, I was involved in ONS at both the local level and my chapter, the Middle Tennessee chapter of ONS, and national levels prior to running for director at large on the board. As I said earlier, I took advantage of just a plethora of opportunities to serve ONS at all levels. And I really feel like all of those experiences, whether it was writing an abstract, whether it was reviewing abstracts, any of those activities really open you up to the possibilities in ONS. As I began to come to the end of my active nursing career, I began to consider how could I continue to serve the mission of ONS? and how could I stay involved and how could I share the experiences I had. But I'll be really honest that it was really working with the Leadership Development Committee, specifically Maggie Frog, Connie Hinkie Yarbrough, and Anna Rodriguez, who again encouraged me and convinced me it was time to consider serving on the board. Those opportunities back in 2019, I went to ONS Congress and I went to sit at the roundtables with some of those Leadership Development Committee members and began to see the possibilities that could be open to me in continuing to serve ONS. They really helped me see how I could take that myriad of ONS experiences and all of my career leadership and administrative experiences and really use them to transition to board governance. I had served on a board, as Janine said, a local board for Our Alive Hospice. I served on a medical advisory board for Gilda's Club here in Nashville. But as Janine says, board governance includes strategy planning, fiscal accountability, organizational oversight. So any activities one can experience in any one of those areas can help with board service. And I think Val mentioned earlier, even community settings that are non-cancer types of boards or types of experiences can certainly help all of us. And again, it's listening to those voices around you and listening, as Val said again, to that voice inside is, can I do it? And again, being willing to dare to get out of what might be your comfort zone to consider things like being on the board.
Thank you, Teresa. Val?
Now, remember, I'm the nosy one, right? So I wondered where all the opportunities were. I didn't have the same exposure to the leaders that Teresa and Janine are talking about. Those were the names that I read on the cover of the textbooks. You know, I didn't work with them. I didn't know them personally or have access. And I didn't think or wasn't brave enough to reach out for that kind of connection. So I'm the one who answered the open call for things that was published in ONS Voice or in the magazine or in emails. So when there was a call for the editorial board for the Oncology Nursing Forum, I filled out the application. I was accepted and I was shocked. And then I wound up sitting in the room with those great oncology minds. And I thought to myself, what am I doing here? But I was there. And what I learned pretty quickly was that I did have something to contribute. I may not have had the connections or all those big names, but I was brave enough to put myself into the room. So when my term at ONF was over, I then extended my hand for CJON, for the Clinical Journal of Oncology Nursing. And to my amazement, they took me back. So I thought, okay, here I am. I really must have something to offer. So I began to learn and absorb from all those people. So same thing happened. The call for the board of directors came out and Nosy Rosie says, wonder what that's all about. Let me figure it out. So I threw my hat in the ring. Maggie Frog and Chip Bailey were fantastic. That LDC, the Leadership Development Committee, really encouraging, really kind of helping mold you and say, this is what it's about. This is what you need to do. This is how you need to pivot. This is how you need to work. Fantastic and encouraging me and helping me understand what a board position entailed. I wasn't successful the first time. And so they encouraged me and supported me to try again. And so here I am. I have board experience in my background, but I can honestly say I'm not really sure I was prepared to be on the board because it is so meaningful and it is so important. I've learned so much in this first year on the board, and I'm learning with every meeting, every time we get together, every new process that comes up, every new project, every new problem that the board analyzes and looks at and decides how to best serve our membership to make that a better situation for everybody, I learn. So how to be a steward for the organization, how to have fidelity towards the board, how to reach consensus for the best benefit of the organization and its members is really the primary responsibility of a director. And I am amazed at the group of people that come together year after year and really hold our profession in such high regard and take this as a solemn job to really do and put our best organization forward.
I couldn't agree with both of you more. Thanks so much for sharing. So let's talk now about how the ONS board functions. It's 9 of us working together. And then we have the board officers, which is the 3 of us. We comprise the executive committee. Let's talk about what each of us do. Val, why don't you start? Tell us a little bit about your role as treasurer.
Well, the treasurer is the one who gets to show you the money, right? So the role of the treasurer is to be responsible to work with the finance team to understand ONS's financial position. So I'm responsible for presenting that financial information, the financial reports, to the ONS Board of Directors and to the membership at our open board meeting at Congress. And I'm also a member of this executive team, a member of the budget committee, and a member of the audit committee. And all of those, the budget committee puts the budget together, and the audit committee works with the auditing company that helps us look at and make sure that all our finances are done in the right way.
Teresa, how about your role as secretary?
Well, I would like to address first that this is my 3rd year on the positions committee. And on the position, and my 2nd year actually of co-chairing that committee with Katie Wiley from the ONS staff. So I have been able to use what I learned from the position committee, because I can tell you that's been a tremendous learning experience serving on that committee, because it really showed me the impact of ONS position statements and how those statements lend guidance by ONS taking a stand on issues that affect oncology nurses. And I think that my first work with the positions committee, learning the skills of editing and documenting accurately and thoroughly, have really lent themselves to my work as the ONS secretary. As ONS secretary, I work to make sure our meeting minutes are accurate and reflective of the board actions, because we want to, on the board, provide transparency to our ONS members. So those minutes are one of our avenues to be able to provide that transparency and to make sure that they do reflect our actions and are accurate. I also oversee official correspondence from the board, as well as participate in special assignments, and am a member, as Janine and Val said, on the executive committee.
I think it shows how each role is really vital to the board as a whole. And as the ONS president, for me, I'm really accountable for articulating the ONS mission and vision to the members, other key stakeholders, and to policymakers. In fact, I'm serving on a couple of different boards this week for congressional panels, just to make sure that our voice is heard. I also ensure the accountability of the board to the membership, and I share, along with the CEO, Brenda Nevajon, the responsibility for maintaining the clarity and integrity of the roles, rights, and responsibilities of the ONS leadership, governing bodies, members, and staff. But I think one of the most important roles is to really engage board members in generative discussions during our meetings. We want to kind of think out of the box. We want to have independent thinking. We want to encourage diverse thinking and sharing ideas in an environment where we trust one another and we really maintain our focus on the mission and vision of ONS. We often ask ourselves, are we doing the right thing for members? Are we doing the right thing for chapters? Have we included DEI in everything that we've thought about? And so as board president, I oversee a lot of that and really encourage input from everybody, all 9 board members. So I know we have just a few minutes left, and so we're going to talk about going forward. We have a lot of exciting work ahead. And as treasurer, Val, what did you take away from your first year that you will bring to us this year?
There's a lot. Mostly the teamwork and the collaboration has impressed me the most. It's hard to believe that first year is over. It flew by, but was capped off by the exciting gathering in person at Congress in Anaheim. And it was so good to be together again. We know that ONS is in a good position financially. We came through COVID without much of an impact, and really our finance team managed us very, very well. So for me, that financial work and oversight is not as consuming as it could be. So it leaves me with time to work on other areas where there's need. So working with the board is an honor, and I consider a privilege. So to be able to bring DEI to our work, to focus on diversity, equity, inclusion in everything that we do, to educate and broaden the knowledge of our members, really by giving them the tools to provide better care is very exciting. So to strengthen our membership and continue to grow as an organization is where I look to in the future.
Teresa, how about you?
Well, I'm just humbled and honored to serve on the ONS Board of Directors, and I feel very grateful for this opportunity. Under the leadership of President Nancy Houlihan, my first 2 years, now Janine as president, I'm very excited about the contributions of the board and feel privileged to have served and continue to serve with our other board members who are just examples of the very best in oncology nursing. I encourage all ONS members to consider service at the local and national levels, take any and all opportunities to volunteer with ONS, seek mentors, colleagues, listen to those who believe in you. We all need each other. We all grow more fully together. I just thank all of you for your contribution to oncology nurses. We are all better for the support we give each other.
Al, how about you?
Well, I think that's very well said. I think, as a whole, we really need to remember that every one of us is braver than you believe, stronger than you know, smarter than you think. Believe in yourself, take the leap. We need you here.
So true. And ONS has a variety of leadership opportunities for interested members. In fact, the application period for people who want to serve on the Leadership Development Committee, which we call LDC, is now open, and it's open until September 9th. So listeners, you can find a link to the application process in this podcast episode notes. And along with other leadership work, the LDC is tasked now with appointing ONS members to serve as directors of large for the next ONS board. So keep an eye out for that. As we move forward, I just wanted to know if you have a sign-off message for any of you. We've got a lot to look forward to, the strategic plan, preparing for our 50th anniversary as an organization. And, I'm so proud of the work that we're doing, and I really encourage others to pursue leadership positions in ONS. So, Teresa, any last words from you?
Challenge yourself, believe in yourself, listen to others.
Most definitely. How about you, Val?
Don't be afraid to step into a leadership role. If not you, then who? By the very nature of being nurses, we're leaders. And so we lead our patients to wellness, to healing, to recovery, or sometimes a gentle or not so gentle passage to whatever comes next. Share your talents. You'll never know until you try. And we need courageous leaders to raise their voices.
Such words of wisdom. I want to thank you both for participating today. I want to thank Stephanie, our moderator who introduced us. And I want to encourage all of you to step forward to consider leadership within the organization, within ONS. And I think the other message out there that we want to leave you with is to bring new people in, invite people to your chapter meetings, to your dinners, to Congress. We're all diverse and we need you all. Step forward and we will welcome you with open arms. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Oncology Nursing Podcast. Tell us about your favorite part of this episode by leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you downloaded your podcast. For more resources and information about oncology nursing, visit us at ons.org or voice.ons.org. The ideas and opinions shared in this episode represent those of the guests and not necessarily ONS.